I finally had to dig in and channel my inner Katie Porter and pull out my whiteboard for this week's video. And I feel like we need to start a book community like resource guide or something. And we're gonna have some key phrases or verses to explain to outsiders what the book community is and what it's about. And so here's one of our first phrases or verses, whatever you want to call it. Book Community 3:16. The book community shall know no peace. No peace. Tell them hello. Say good morning. Hello, good morning. Right here. Good morning. Say right here. Look. Say good morning. Okay, well, you're gonna be rude. Can't help that. Hey, hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jess. This is rude ass Nigel. And welcome to another installment of Book Community, where I what? Keep you abreast of what's going on in the bookish community. Or I try my best. So I'm filming today a little differently because, like I said before, I had to bring in my whiteboard, and I wasn't kidding. I literally have a bunch of stuff written out on my whiteboard because I was just so confused. So this first story starts with author Emery Lee, who has a book coming out on May 4th with HarperCollins called Meet Cute Diary. So a few days ago, March 12th, Emery tweeted out a long thread, and I'm going to read the long thread and then we'll go from there. Okay, I wasn't going to say anything because I was hoping to just quietly fix everything so I would never have to, but I can't. You may have noticed I no longer have an agent name listed in my bio. A short while ago, my agent let me go. I've recently started coming to an understanding about how my ADHD affects the way I read/write fiction. When I explained this to her, she asked to part ways. She said she was no longer a good advocate for me and that I deserved someone who could understand what I'm doing. I started querying again. Recently, a new agent offered me and we got along great. She loved my work and was totally open to what I wanted to write. When I asked her about disability accommodations, she rescinded the offer. She said she couldn't be a good advocate for me. She said she just didn't have anything in place to be able to meet my needs and that I would be better off finding someone else. So now I not only lack an agent, but the motivation to get one. What's the point when no one wants to advocate for an author with ADHD? Why should I keep sending out my work so I can continuously be told that my work is brilliant, but I'm not? That even though I'm a great writer with amazing story ideas, the effort of having to put with and deal with me ultimately cancels out the value of my work. Everyone says rejection isn't personal in this industry, but that's not true. These people didn't reject my work, they rejected me. I was rejected because my disability made me not worth the effort it would take to get my stories out into the world. I told both agents that I wasn't demanding anything, that I was more than happy to find a middle ground, to work things out and discuss, but both took it upon themselves to make the best decision for me, even though that meant leaving me to find an advocate who doesn't exist. Because this industry wasn't made to help disabled people. The idea that someone out there will just magically be better for me is so absurdly misguided. What I need is not someone who will magically be okay with me, I just need someone willing to give me a chance. But frankly, I am tired, and I have never hated my writing or myself more. I have never in the 5 years I've spent in this industry felt more rejected. I have never before doubted that my stories would reach someone, but frankly, I don't feel like I can keep doing this. And I especially hate that I have to say all of this just before my debut releases. I want you all to be able to celebrate that book. I know it means so much to so many of you, but to me, it feels like the thing that was milked out of me before the industry tossed me away. And I know all of this will probably come back to bite me in the ass, but I couldn't not say anything. I can't pretend the industry doesn't actively discriminate against disabled writers in ways that are unheard of. I can't pretend this didn't happen to me. I also want to say that I'm not asking for anything here. I'm not asking for the agents to apologize. I didn't name them because I don't want them canceled. I just genuinely don't feel like I can be in this industry anymore. I'll fulfill all the promises I made, but I don't think I can keep going beyond that. Which is terrifying because this was my dream career. I've worked toward it since I was a kid, and literally that's what I got a degree for. And frankly, I'm not really good at anything else. But I also don't know how to keep fighting to be in an industry that thinks firing or refusing to work with disabled people is charity. I don't know how to exist in a space that has made it so completely clear doesn't actually want me. Okay, well, my ex-agent soft blocked me, so I'm guessing she saw this. I'm sure a lot of people think it was unprofessional of me to post this, but I just want to say there isn't really much else to do when you've already been fired for asking to be heard. Also, since this is getting way more attention than I ever planned, I just want to add the disclaimer that my publisher is not involved here. They've actually been great in picking up the accommodations I needed from their end, and I'm grateful. Okay, getting a lot of anxiety, so gonna step away, but I want to say thank you to all my friends, y'all know who you are, who talked me through this. I really was not going to speak up because I felt like my agent was trying to help. I'm not so convinced anymore. But it's hard to speak up against someone with so much power and respect, especially in the diverse book community. I still haven't named her, but I know she's seen this, so I can only assume there will be doors closed to me. I accept and I'm okay with this. Frankly, I don't think she's a vindictive person with any aims to ruin my career. I think this is just the way the industry teaches people to be. And that's why I wanted to say something. If any systemic change comes from this, it'll have been worth it. And to all the agents and editors who have followed me because of this thread, take a moment and think long and hard about what you're doing for disabled authors. Now listen to more disabled authors and do more and keep that momentum up until things change. Actually, I have one more thing to add, and this is really important. I tried to speak on these issues subtly over the past week and everyone ignored me. Stop waiting for disabled people to lose our entire livelihood before you listen to us. Listen to us when we call out ableism. Okay, so now that people are saying I'm lying, I'm just gonna say it. The agent in question is Beth Phelan, founder of DVPit/DVCon. Good people can do bad things. I firmly believe Beth is a good person who made a decision based on the ableism inherent to publishing. I fully support the work of DVCon and everything Beth has done for marginalized authors. It's still perfectly logical that she hurt me, another marginalized author. The idea that Beth can do no wrong because she founded something great is toxic and anti what she stands for. Like she has literally stated multiple times that she wouldn't want victims to not be able to speak up because the person they're speaking against is held in high esteem. So yeah, Beth acted in a way that was ableist. Do I think she hates neurodivergent people? No, but she was actively a part of the system that bars marginalized authors from publishing. This is what this thread is about. As I said, this is not now, nor was it ever a call to cancel her or her work. This is a call to bring awareness of ableism manifest in publishing. That's it. Also, I wasn't going to include her name, but many people already know it, and I'm seeing it tossed around by people shit-talking me. So just so we're all on the same page, here you go. This should go without saying, but since apparently it isn't, do not go harassing Beth or sending her inappropriate messages in my name. Just don't even consider it. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Thank you to everyone who reached out. I am now muting this because my brain is going to explode. Please keep working for change in the industry and providing space for disabled authors. We have a lot to give if the industry will just let us. So that is the thread that is now deleted, but that was the start of a lot of subtweets you may have seen on Twitter about neurodivergency within the publishing industry. So then Beth Phelan, apparently, according to some smaller tweets I saw, people were saying that she was liking people's subtweets about Emery and hadn't said anything. So Emery's thread was on March 12th. And this is 10 hours ago. I'm reading Beth's comments. So this was March 15th that Beth finally said something. And she said, I acknowledge as an agent it's inappropriate to give specifics on terminated client relationships, but I can promise it had nothing to do with ADHD. Regardless, we should talk about ableism in publishing. I will always strive to be a better advocate for my clients and the community. This has been an overall painful situation, and I specifically didn't speak out at first in order to avoid any more harassment both towards me and Emery. My statement is specifically to clarify the situation, but it should go without saying I don't want anyone harassing him because of this. So some people were, very much agreeing with that and saying, I believe you've always had good intentions. Still, I understand why authors may be wary as to why a misunderstanding of this magnitude happened in the first place and what details led the author to come to that assumption. Beth said, I definitely don't blame authors for being wary after only hearing one side. I wish I could say more, but I just don't think it's appropriate at this time. Someone else, I believe you're doing your best. I get nervous when I read this kind of statement, though. Maybe you think the situation doesn't have anything to do with ADHD, but the other party feels it did. I don't think you can make that promise. And Beth said, that's totally fair, and I understand there are other circumstances that make me very confident. And so more, people, authors, readers commenting. And then I saw one person that said this comment is too little too late. And the funny thing is I never saw anyone harass you over this. And I sure as hell didn't see you make any attempt to defend him. So as we know, Courtney Milan doesn't sleep. And I think that she may rival me with time spent on Twitter. But she had a thread about neurodiversity in publishing. So she started, I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's super long and we'll be here all day, but she said, hey, there's a whole conversation going on about neurodiversity in publishing right now. I have a lot of thoughts about this, many of which are tangled up in my own experiences. I also don't think I'm seeing the full conversation that's happening, and I'm afraid to say something that people will think is responding to a subtweet that I didn't see or didn't register as a subtweet because I don't know the players who are talking about this very well. I'm writing this for people who have been despairing because they think there may be no or little space in publishing for neurodiverse people. I'm not writing it to subtweet anyone else, just to talk about my own experience as a neurodiverse person. So she goes to talk about writing her second book, The Hero is Depressed. She wrote him as depressed because she was depressed and trying to figure out her own depression. I was also in excessively depressed frame of mind, and mind you, this was my second book. It took me forever to write that damn book, and when I finally turned it in about 6 months later than the contract said, my then editor told me basically to delete all the words in that book and write another book. Among other things said about this book was that depressed people were just not sexy. Cue Greater Depression. And so she talks more about problems with that book, the response and how that was ableist. That then she speaks about the broader problem of systemic ableism. If people are only rarely encouraging what neurodivergence looks like, you're simultaneously figuring out the rules for how to write about while also world building the interior of a mind that people haven't often seen. Anyone who is writing about their marginalized identity is going to have to actually work harder and be better at their job than others. And that is a systemic thing that is happening. I do not see any way to change that systemic thing other than we do the work consistently and well so that this interior world building that we are doing becomes familiar and welcome to publishing at large. So that's the downside. But then she does talk about some advantages of being neurodiverse and more personal experiences growing up. I can link the thread down below if you want to read the entire thread. But towards the end, someone asked, like, were you not neurodiverse in terms of depression? Was it something else? I asked because I've been asked to edit a novel by an autistic friend, and I'm finding things quote unquote wrong, for want of a better word. And I don't know if it's because they're a new author or because they're neurodiverse. So I'm trying to read fiction by autistic people to get a feel for how they write. So Courtney responded, I don't at this point have any idea to describe what I am. I think the label of depression technically fit at the time, but I do not have a good idea of where I am. I'm actively talking to a therapist about whether I want a full diagnosis, and so I don't feel comfortable sharing guesses, but it's pretty complicated and more than just depression. So that was Courtney adding in her own life experiences to being an author with who's neurodivergent. Another thread by an editor that Emery also linked or retweeted, and it was by Joy Demora, and her bio says that she is neurodivergent. And the thread starts with, y'all, this is an established problem in publishing, and I say this as an editor who used to get handed the problem and demanding authors because I was so good at handling them. Most of the problem authors with hindsight were neurodiverse, and my ADHD ass found ways to help. I didn't know I had ADHD at the time, but I knew how mentally exhausting it was to do what was being asked of them. So I found ways to do it for them. I went above and beyond to take the mental strain off my clients to help them conform to the established norms of publishing. Because in this industry, it's very clear. You either conform or you don't get published. That's the truth of it. And for many of us, we can't afford to say no. And that norm is code for neurotypical, a style of writing that often excludes neurodiverse brains, both as readers and writers, for the sake of mass marketability. The publishing industry doesn't care if they exclude us. So what if a group of the population struggles to read? That's on us for having, ooh, shiny, can't sit still brain. Not once do they ever consider that with a few minor tweaks, they can make things more inclusive. The tweaks are often minimal, like minor adjustments to sentence structure, allowing for a little more leeway with filler words, and a lot of ND brains latch onto the rhythm of sentences. Make it too snappy and punchy, and our brains will skip over it or break our immersion. And I don't need to tell anyone with ADHD what happens when our immersion is broken. That's the end of it. Goodbye ability to read, absorb anything on the page. I find audiobooks easier for this reason because I don't have to see the interruption. I mean, fuck, I went through this process last year with my own wonderful editors when I was trying to explain some of the sentence structure changes they were doing were causing me mental anguish to process, and I knew it too would hurt my readers. I pushed to retain a lot of my sentence structure while they did their job of making sure it wasn't overly repetitive enough to annoy neurotypicals. And I'm so glad I did, because do you know the biggest piece of feedback I got about my book? Holy shit, I can read. People just straight up crying in my inbox because for once it wasn't a struggle to read something. It wasn't mentally exhausting. It wasn't painful. They were included. Do you know how rare that is for us? Do you know how even rarer it is to find a publisher or editor willing to work with a neurodiverse author and make accommodations rather than hacking our work apart to make it normal? But again, no one gives a fuck because it's ADHD. And while many people talk a good game about inclusivity, they don't actually know what that means for neurotypical brains. And when they find out, they drop us. Emery Lee is not the first or last person who will find themselves in this situation. And until people stop treating ADHD like a problem for us to fix for their convenience, it's never going to go away. Some people's brains are different. That is not a bad thing. Include us in rant. Excuse the typos, I'm on mobile, I'm having a bad visual processing day. Then, if this is not confusing enough already, so I think that Emery Lee may have made a tweet, may have replied to something Courtney Milan said, but now it's deleted. But I saw that Courtney Milan had a quote tweet and the original tweet is no longer available. But Courtney said, I just want to clarify something. I accurately described myself as neurodiverse. I talked about the depression in the thread because that was where I had my experience in publishing. I think people who know me have read my books, probably have some idea that I'm not neurotypical, but I also don't think that I need to do more than label myself as neurodiverse to discuss how I've dealt with it. I also personally do not think I could separate my mental illness so easily from neurodivergence. I have come to understand that much of what got labeled as depression was a function of trying to make my brain the way people expected it to. And some people replied, like, this is a particularly upsetting take given how often ADHD struggles can contribute to depression and how often untreated ADHD is diagnosed as depression because it is a symptom and very real. You can't just cut things up like this and declare that's how the world feels. So people were just talking about, you didn't need to clarify. But then what I saw was that Emery replied to Courtney's tweet. Oh my, I am so tongue twisted today. So Courtney was making that clarification saying like she is neurodiverse, and I'm assuming someone was saying maybe she wasn't. So Emery replied and said, this was absolutely not a call out of you or your experience. It was just a clarification because this discussion started off about my experiences of ADHD. So I wanted to clarify that mental illness does not necessarily work the same. And Courtney replied, I understand where you're coming from. I am fairly certain that I am strongly ADHD, so I feel kind of weird about a clarification that suggests my thread is inapplicable to myself. I am actively talking to a therapist about how to integrate all these pieces, and so I did not give further labels, but it is very clear to me that I am in fact neurodiverse under this definition. Then Emery replied, again, this thread was not calling you out. It was just clarifying definitions because most people don't know what they mean. And the convo was specifically about ADHD. And since you mentioned depression a lot, I wanted to make it clear they aren't the same in this regard. Like this was not a, you don't have a right to talk about this. It was an addition, as in for people who don't know this and this, just want to make that clear. Does that make sense? And Courtney said, I'm having a pretty hard emotional reaction here, which may not be fair to your actual words. It very much felt like I just got gatekeeped out of my actual neurodivergence, especially since people came into the thread because of the quote tweet to question me on this. And Emery said, I'm sorry, and I'm really sorry people would do that to you because it's truly unfair. If it helps, I'll delete the thread because ultimately I think people are misunderstanding and I don't want more people piling on you. And Courtney said, I think adding a clarification is fine. I would appreciate that. And I appreciate the apology. Thanks. But more people were talking about questions on what you define as neurodivergence and everything. So there's just there's a lot of messages in there if you want to read them and asking what you consider. And so I'm a psychiatrist. So it seems like from that interaction with Emery and Courtney that something like depression or anxiety or something is a mental illness and it doesn't make you neurodiverse. I don't know. Don't quote me. But then also I did see Emery reply to someone else who was asking about like the terms and trying to understand. So someone said, what would be the appropriate term to encompass both? The original tweets were deleted. I would not be comfortable describing myself as mentally ill because, well, obviously reasons re-employability, etc., neurodivergent feels like a less judgment-laden word for I have an invisible disability indicator. And so Emery said neuroatypical. I see a lot. I think before I just said neurotypical, so I apologize for misspeaking. So the person replied, okay, I've never seen that one. Thanks. To be honest, if I were describing it, I'd say my glass is sometimes just empty. There is no liquid to work with, or my glass has shrunk to 1/10 its normal size. The idea that it can be worked around, I think, is going to throw people. Emery replied, honestly, as someone with multiple mental illnesses as well as ADHD, the dividing line is I can treat/medicate mental illnesses. ADHD is who I am. I cannot get rid of it. Even treatments like Adderall just help with like 3 symptoms. Is not the same. The microphone kept brushing up against my shirt, and then I was touching the microphone, so some of the audio didn't come out great, so I have to edit some out. I'm sorry. Emery says, of course, I just mean that ADHD is not something I would ever want to treat. It is not an illness. It is just a label used to explain the way my world is different. And frankly, I'm very happy with my ADHD. Cannot say the same for MI. I think he means mental illness. And said ADHD has things that are difficult due to the way the world works, like attention span and stuff, but things like how fast we think and our sense of justice and the way we internalize music are just who we are in a different world. They're things that would make us thrive. So I just thought that was an interesting part to share, but a lot of people were having discussions on mental illness and different disabilities and things like that. But back to the original thing about losing his agent because of having ADHD. So Emery deleted the original thread, and then Emery wrote this thread. So yesterday, which for me was March 14th, Emery tweeted, I'm unlocking to make this statement, and then I'm going to try to log off for a while. I deleted my tweets about my agent and my experiences. I was informed today that everything I've said has read extremely disingenuous, enough so that some old friends can't associate with me. I have not heard directly from anyone besides this one person about issues with what I said, so I'll mostly be addressing subtweets. First and foremost, I want to say I was never attempting to speak for the entirety of the neurodiverse community. I was just relaying my experiences and some other experiences by other neurodiverse people who had shared them with me. Never was the point that people with ADHD can't read, or any variation of that statement, or the idea that all people with my disability experience it the same and want/need the same things. Frankly, I completely disagree with that, and that's largely why I brought this up in the first place. I feel like publishing as a whole doesn't know how to meet individual needs. But before that, I want to apologize for directly naming my ex-agent because I think that was a mistake. As I mentioned before, the point of this conversation was never whether or not this person made the wrong decision cutting ties with me. It was about the pain I felt at the hands of the industry and how I felt that pain directly tied to my experience with my disability. I iterated what happened based on how I saw it. When I asked to explore how my disability affects the way I read fiction, I was told my agent couldn't work with me. Is it possible I misread the situation? Yes. Is it possible there were other reasons at play? Sure. It seems many people know that, for a fact, the reason was not the reason I stated, and if that's true, I'm sorry for claiming otherwise. I genuinely have not been given any reason for the severance other than you should work with an agent who understands what you're doing. Again, this issue is not about the quality of the agent's character or intentions. Also, had it not been followed by another agent rescinding representation over asking for accommodations, I would have let it go. But with 2 players in the game, I realized how systemic this was. I feel like the focus on the agent has completely obscured my point, and maybe that's why it all read differently than I intended. I don't know. But ultimately, my point was just that ableism is alive and well in publishing. I hope all or most of us can agree on that. I feel like a lot of people are upset about the choices I've made to the point that they're ignoring valid issues being brought up by other authors. And frankly, I feel really bad about that. I don't care if you think I'm lying and vindictive, but to see people speaking out about ableism they faced and all of it brushed off with you should have just done your edits is devastating. Regardless of my experience, to just ignore so many voices because you dislike me is cruel and horrifying. So I'm exiting this conversation because it's important and I don't want people to dismiss it because I'm around. And I'm sorry to anyone who's been brushed aside, ignored, or spoken over because of how I initially approached the situation. Finally, to everyone who thinks I'm being disingenuous, I can't convince you otherwise, and frankly, I'm done trying to. I accept that some friends want nothing to do with me, and I know I'll be a book Twitter meme in like 2 months and whatever it happens. But I'm going to ask you all to use whatever decency you have to make it about me. Not ADHD, not authors asking for accommodations. Talk about how I'm a liar and a manipulator and how I hate edits or whatever, but don't make it about disability. I'm shutting up now. I'm stepping out of the ring. I'm accepting all your accusations and everything that comes with them. So just let people talk about their experiences and listen to them without insisting it can't be true because it doesn't affect you. Woo. So that was a lot, and I hope that made sense, but I'll try to sum it up again. So Emery Lee is the author, the main person in the situation. He has a book coming out in May, and he has ADHD. And the original thread was him talking about how he feels that he lost his agent, and then tried to get another agent, and they said never mind because of his ADHD and the accommodations that would have to come with it. And so there was a lot of conversation about that thread. I guess some people took offense and thought maybe that Emery was generalizing the experience of all people with ADHD or all people who are neurodiverse. And some people took offense. Some people, came to the side of Emery. And then he also named the agent. The agent tweeted and said it was not about ADHD, but obviously won't name what it was. So now there's all the speculation. Other people put their input in, like Courtney Milan, her experiences with being neurodiverse, and there was questions on, is that neurodiversity, and a lot of things. So there's a lot messed up in there. And then I saw some people like asking like how to be more accommodating, which is good, to open up that conversation. I saw someone said at Neurodivergent Writers, I recognize this varies from person to person, but what are some things editors can do to help you? I've seen things about communication, for example, video versus voice calls, and would love to know more. Please don't feel obligated to disclose anything personal. I also saw I've had a few neurodivergent writers message me about querying and how the process often feels inaccessible. I'm curious, what are some ways the pitch process could be made easier? I know no one's experience is representative of everyone, but I'd love to find some answers. So there's a lot of conversation about that going on. So maybe if you're an author or a person trying to query, these could be some helpful resources just to look at, to see what other people are experiencing or what challenges they come up across. But it was a lot, and I was very confused for a long time, and it just seems really unfortunate. Like I said, I'm not very knowledgeable. I don't have ADHD. I'm also not a writer, but it feels like Emery got ganged up on, and that seems unfortunate. And it's like, if you don't name the agent, then people are just like, well, is it really true? And then if you do name the agent, then it's bad because you're calling this person out. So it seemed like they were really in a lose-lose situation. I wanted to add in these tweets that I saw after the fact. This one says, I know 5 disabled authors who were dropped after asking for accommodations. One of the agents who dropped them just retweeted that disabled authors deserve to be listened to and supported. There are no words for the anger I feel at such performative behavior. And someone replied, I respect your desire to keep things private because it's not your story, but I hope that neurodivergent writers can find the strength to call people out like that, because if we can't start identifying bad actors, how can we hold the industry to do better? And they replied, whisper networks. Many of us do tell other folks privately, and writing groups often have a curated list of people to avoid because many can't afford to go public. Going public often destroys careers. We have to hope one day that the industry develops checks and balances, because the author has the most to lose and the least to gain by holding bad agents accountable. It's a martyr situation. And I just thought that was important to share, because it's really frustrating that people can't openly share these things because they have to risk their career. And yeah, like they said, I hope one day that maybe there'll be checks and balances, but it doesn't look like that's going to be anytime soon. And that is important to speak up. I mean, I always talk about things here on this channel, usually in regards to diversity. And a lot of it sometimes comes down to like race and like gender identity and things like that. But neurodiversity is also really important. So they're obviously, in addition to the systemic racism, there's also systemic ableism. And there's so much, my God, there's so much work publishing needs to do to be an actual inclusive and, widely representative place. And I don't know how they get there, but just wanted to share that. I'll leave links to any threads that I can. They're kind of hard to navigate through since some of the original tweets are deleted, but that's a general summation of the story as I understood it. But feel free to correct me in the comments if I got something wrong. Hi. Hello. I'm sorry about this setup. I really need a fucking camera. I'm so sick of filming on my phone. Anyway, this was not planned because I originally already recorded a second part to this video. And then when I was going to, like right now, I'm finishing editing. And then, but I'm not, because I realized I had a whole nother like 32-minute clip. And I was like, no, this video is already too long and that would be like a fucking hour. So anyway, something my friend sent me that's funny, so to lighten the mood, I'm just gonna include here, and then I'll just have to put out a part 2. Oh my God, I swear to God, every week I'm like, I'm not gonna do a part 2. But these become so long because some of them are so convoluted. Anyway, I look a mess because I'm editing, but you can see my cute little shelf that I'm starting to build. Okay, so it's funny. I think it's funny. So a bookseller on Twitter posted a screenshot of this interaction that she had, and it said, "Hi, don't ever do this." And there's a tweet from some dude named Clifton that's like, at her, "Sell my books." That's it. Just says, "Sell my books." And she said, 1, I don't know you. 2, I don't know who you think you are talking to, commanding me to do anything. Have a nice day. He replied, "Educate yourself. Use the tools available to you. Have a nice day." And she said, "If you don't get out of my face." He also said, "If you're wanting me to block his name, then I'm going to go ahead and promptly say this. No, I don't owe him, a stranger, anything. I don't owe you anything. I will say this though. What he did was annoying and laughable, but hey, if you buy a book," I think she meant if you buy his book, "let me know how it is. Don't send him hate mail or anything. It isn't that serious. It's more eye-opening than anything else." And so I don't know how true this is, but someone took a Amazon review from his book, and it says this dude totally wrote this 5-star review of his own book on Amazon under a fake name. Literally no one else in all of human history would ever compare this dude's book to The fucking Great Gatsby. And I just want to read you the review because it's just nonsense. And it said, "Jessie and Responsibility is not an easy book. Elliptical, disjunct, condensed, poetic, and self-consciously experimental, but one that clearly repays the effort and occasional puzzlement entailed in its traversal. Although simultaneously a cautionary tale about addiction, a literary portrait of and tribute to the title character, and the story of a deep and memorable friendship between 2 American men living in Asia, the novella is above all about the growth of its narrator, whose voice is what marks it as extraordinary. The narrator is intelligent, widely read, and opinionated, with a restless mind that leaps disconcertingly at times from subject to subject. The tone is mesmerizing at turns, irascible, quirky, opinionated, brilliant, bitchy, and often very funny. Indeed, more than any aspect of the conventional plot, character, setting, conflict, situation, etc., it is the narrator's mind that is the focus and fascination of the book, a characteristic that Jessie and Responsibility shares, perhaps surprisingly, with The Great Gatsby. The novel is rough and unrefined, and in that sense most definitely not like Fitzgerald, but that is crucial to its appeal. By the author's own account, this book is personal, a processing and reworking of his own experience. We can only hope that Jessie and Responsibility is just the first of many works from this source, for the mind that produced it is interesting and fertile, rich in ideas with an uncanny feel for the English language. Barnhart is a real talent. Oh, he for sure wrote that review. I love it as fertile. Like, who uses elliptical, disjunct? Like, it's a mess. And then some people included other screenshots of his work. Like, apparently he has some poems. And this says, I'll just read you a few. It says, "The Seal Indian, oh, the feeling of living flesh on fiery death. Quads. Piss, sand. At least it wasn't boring. Spit. Smiley emoji." God, that's good. Oh, we got another one. "The Barbershop. Do you know the meaning of incognito? $13 cuts, no fade. Frowning emoji. Beginner's luck. I wrote a poem and it turned into another poem, and it was the first poem I ever wrote." So this man is obviously very, very talented. Also, someone said they went undercover to detect why he messaged her, and he was saying So he basically said, no, she's a stranger. I don't know why. It's insane. Amazon makes money selling my books. Why doesn't she? Hashtag fool. Just rude. People miss opportunities every day. God bless them. And they asked, oh, you were trying to help her business? And he said, for sure. I don't think she needs your help. And I don't think I would want to sell that either. The replies are the replies are so good. And they have other screenshots of some other tweets that he has tweeted and an excerpt from another book, I think. And it's a mess. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there was a paragraph where I was just like, and he's talking about this woman named Bridget. Okay, well, in the meantime, there's iced tea. Not for the last time I had to stop myself from asking her age. Pale, skinny blonde, like they're pigmentary polar opposites, defy age estimation, and for opposite reasons. Lack of pigment brings premature aging. Narrow bones keep them childlike. A plastic pendant the size and shape of a walnut with a portrait of the Little Mermaid Ariel hung from her neck, adding to the mystery. Mesozoic or natal, her circulation was flushed. 3 songs played before I noticed she was still beating with sweat. Pills are always a possibility, but so is a fernal metabolism. Just a mess. Yeah. After reading some of those, he definitely wrote that review because nobody would say all those things that his writing. I guess maybe you could call it elliptical because it just keeps going places. I don't know. Anyway, I apologize if this video is weird, but yeah, I messed up and thought I had already edited all of it, and obviously I had not. So I will just make that video a separate video. So, I mean, there'll be 2 shorter videos. I don't want to make an hour-long video. Last week was already like fucking 42 minutes. I'm sick of myself. I really don't know brevity. Brevity don't know me. Anyway, I want to take this to say that you should go check out a collaborative channel that Ashley does with, I think her name is Deidre. And it's called Now That's What I Call Black Love. Now That's Called Black Love. That's what it's called. It's not Now That's What I Call Black Love. It's not a goddamn Now CD. I apologize. This video is a hot damn mess today. I am so sorry. Anyway, it's a collaborative channel and they talk about Black romance. So if you're interested in that, check out the channel. It's going to be linked down below, but that live stream gave a lot of insight. They have other videos talking about publishing industry, but also recommendations. So I highly recommend if you're interested in Black romance to check them out. Okay, so you're still here. My microphone is upstairs, but today's recommendation is going to be, this video is so ghetto. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna give you that Malcolm from Jurassic Park. You're gonna get this. My gray on gray look. Anywho, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. So Mass Incarceration in the Age of Color Blindness. This is excellent. This book is 10 years old at least, but still very relevant. The audiobook has an updated foreword where the author talks about, thinking about this book now. It's been 10 years that she wrote it, but everything is still very applicable because nothing has changed. The audiobook is great, but this really talks about how slavery didn't end, it really just morphed. So we had slavery, then we had Jim Crow, and now we have mass incarceration, and how that disproportionately affects Black and brown people, specifically Black men. And it is a really tough book. It's definitely not a fun read, but I thought it was really well written and insightful. And I think it should be mandatory reading for everyone, especially, just everyone, because this, you just need to know, okay? And I thought this was relevant to recommend since we were talking about, Daniel Green and having police in his book, which I didn't really cover, but whatever. It just seems like right now with how we just keep seeing that police are raggedy in the United States and worldwide. So you should check this out. And that's enough of this Malcolm pose for you. I'm out. Actually, wait. Okay, so if you like this video and it wasn't too much of a hot mess, I'm really sorry, but if you could give it a thumbs up and if you could subscribe, any links to any of the Twitter threads will be in the description. Also, links to things that are going on in the world, ways you can help. My social media, ways to support my channel if you would like to. And that's it. Okay, I'm gonna go. Bye.